Coming up next on Tech News Weekly, it's me, Jason Howell, and I start the show off talking with my good pal Florence from Gizmodo. She pits the new Apple iPhone 15 Pro against Google's Pixel lineup.
Ooh, I am Micah Sargent, and I invite on Hugh Langley of Business Insider to talk about the updates coming to Google Bard. Now it can take a look at your Gmail and maybe tell you when your flight is.
I certainly hope so. Sam Machkovech joins. It's been a long time since he was on last. It's the perfect opportunity because Microsoft had an intense leak of Xbox information. Sam breaks it all down in detail.
And then I round things out with my story of the week about everything, or most everything, that Amazon announced at its ALEXA event. It's all that coming up on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 304, recorded Thursday, September 21st, 2023. iPhone 15 Pro versus Google Pixel.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Zocdoc, the free app where you can find and book appointments online with thousands of top-rated, patient-reviewed physicians and specialists. Filtered specifically for ones who take your insurance, are located near you, and treat almost any condition. Go to Zocdoc.com/TNW and download the Zocdoc app for free.
And by Discourse, the online home for your community. Discourse makes it easy to have meaningful conversations and collaborate anytime, anywhere. Visit discourse.org/twit to get 1 month free on all self-serve plans.
And by Melissa. More than 10,000 clients worldwide rely on Melissa for full-spectrum data quality and ID verification software. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts, Micah Sargent.
I'm the other guy, Jason Howell. Good to see you, Micah.
Good to see you, Jason, although I'm looking at you through the smoke that is apparently in the air.
Yeah, the air quality is not good. I don't know what it's even attributed to. It's not like there's...
I just saw something this morning about wildfires, so I don't know.
Man, a couple of years ago, we were so on top of it when this happened. Yeah. And now we're like, it's just climate
just so
change.
Much to think about.
Every year.
So much to pay attention to.
Oh, man, I can't think of smoke around all this AI that's happening everywhere. Also, all of these Apple devices that are apparently happening everywhere. That's my attempt at a segue into our first interview. Apple brought the noise and raised the roof with its latest...
Raise the roof.
Pro iPhone, the iPhone 15 Pro. Good friend and former co-host from All About Android, Florence joins us to share her take from her Gizmodo piece. And Flo, first of all, it's so great to see you.
Hi, Flo.
Thank you. It's so great to see you guys.
It's nice to know that you're behind us staring at our screens.
Yes.
reading our laptops. Don't look at that. That's my script for the interview.
This has all the cheats on it, the answers on it.
Right. I really appreciated your article because it wasn't just like, hey, this is the new iPhone 15 Pro. It was looking at the iPhone 15 Pro, and yes, it is a review, but it's also kind of a comparison point against what competitors have going in the Android space. Namely, I'd say primarily Google and its latest smartphone, at least for the moment anyways, the Pixel 7 Pro. We've got the 8 and the 8 Pro coming in a matter of a couple of weeks, right? Are you going to be following or covering that live event when it happens?
I'm going to be in New York City for the Made by Google event, so I will be there I will probably bring the iPhone 15 Pro Max with me to do that initial comparison. I'm really looking forward to getting those two devices head to head. And I didn't spend as much time on the Pixel 7 Pro, I didn't spend as much time retesting it because I kind of, I've had this year with these devices. And so what was going on with the 15 Pro, I'm really feeling it. And really it comes down to the minute you pick up an iPhone, it feels like a more premium experience than what the Pixels have been the last couple of generations, which is frustrating.
Okay, so
but I do want to.
Yeah,
I just want to quickly throw kudos, though. Not that companies need my kudos, but
they're thirsty for your kudos, Flo.
Right. Samsung, honestly, when you look at like the comparison of specs, like if you're just doing spec by spec, Samsung is the one that's more closely aligned with what the iPhone is doing in its Pro lineup. I mean, even down to like that periscopic camera system, like that was something that debuted on the S23 Ultra this year. And so that's why I was like very excited to try it in the 15 Pro Max.
Indeed. So here's the first question that I have for you, and you just kind of set it up a few seconds ago. From the moment you pick up the new iPhone, it feels like a different experience. It feels like there's something tangible about that experience that feels more premium, or like if you had to put your finger on it, what is that difference? What is it coming from Android land? Picking up the iPhone, like what? Because I mean, there are a lot of really well-designed Android phones, but yet I think this is an opinion that a lot of people have. When they pick up an iPhone, it just feels different.
Yes. Samsung's devices are actually very well designed.
Yeah.
Kind of along the lines. I didn't mean to like mention Samsung so much today, but I've just been thinking a lot about it, just the trajectory of the phones. Yeah. So the iPhone 15 Pro in particular, that new titanium casing is really... It's really in its favor because it makes it seem lighter. It's only an ounce lighter, but like I like to go hiking. We live here in California with these beautiful hills when it's not smoky. And I usually bring a small pack with me and a big thing of water. And so the small pack, I would notice when I would pack the 14 Pro that it would Pro Max, it would add this like bit of heft that I wasn't getting from any Pixel device that I had on me. But the trade-off of that is that the Pixels, they feel hollow when you pick them up, which just immediately, there's just something about like the hollow feel that's like, it just doesn't feel completed.
I don't like hollow. Yeah, if I pick up a phone and I feel that hollow quality,
if you can knock on it and it makes an echo, there's too much, there's too much open space on the inside, which makes me think, what is this in shock resistance? Like what's rattling around in there? And not to mention,
squirrels reject nuts that do that. They like, not
that's
that
true.
One.
That's
Apple
true.
must employ a ton of squirrels in their design department.
Okay, this phone gets nope, that one's
I was gonna say Cupertino used to be all orchards, so it makes sense.
True. Yeah, totally. It checks out.
Around there.
And actually, what you're saying reminds me of some other news that happened this week. The opening of the Pixel tablet. And of course, Ron Amadio at Ars Technica, being very like finger wagging at the fact that when you take a look on the inside of that Pixel device, and I'm curious to know how that compares with other of Google's devices, there's a lot of open space, and it's not as tightly packed. And we know that Apple is so like top of the heap when it comes to how they design these devices, how they position every element to provide the best balance, to fill the space with the components, the meaningful components that matter. So that's probably what you're feeling.
I'm not, I've spent a long time trying not to touch this ecosystem, but like the more I live in it, even half the time, the more I learn about so much that we could be doing better on the Android side of things. I think the other thing is just the way that they contoured the edges. I know it's like, sounds very marketing fluff.
Is it chamfered?
From Keynote, from everything we've read.
I think it's not this time.
Yeah, it's not, but it's a fun word to say. They're more rounded this time around. Yeah.
I mean, they're more rounded, and
like
guess what?
Rounding.
They feel more comfortable to hold in the hand because the last couple of iPhones had this very sharp edge about it, which made them feel almost inhospitable, I want to say. When you have a phone that's like that, it's like driving a car with those big spikes coming out of the wheels. It's rude, So, the new iPhones are less rude.
That's the tagline. The new iPhone, less rude than ever. Love it. What about the action button? What do you think of the action button?
Yes. The action button.
Because that was a feature that my initial knee-jerk reaction was, oh, we've had those on Android before. But then when I really thought about it, I was like, well, actually, I don't know that we have had like an action button that you can completely program, or have we? I was trying to think about it.
Do you remember? the tapping on the back.
Well, there is that.
Fingerprint.
Yes, I remember that.
That's clever.
Pixel used to have.
So that, yes, I did recall that. I guess I was thinking like the literal like button that you press that does the thing. But yeah, we had that, and you could program that-ish. You could give it a number of, different options.
Right. And there were Android phones with like a ruggedness to them. They were very much like a contractor's phone. So you could make the action button, like call a person that you need to
call
talk
Dale,
to, or turn on
tell
infrared.
him to get over here, stat. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is the action button. By default, it's just a mute button, which is great because as I said in my review, I get my nails done every 2 weeks, and it's just easier to press a button than it is to try and flip a little switch, especially when you have long claws. I was very appreciative of that. I also liked the idea of, okay, well, I'm going car camping. I need my flashlight to go to the outhouse at night. So just, the action button is so much easier than trying to go in, shuffling through menus to turn on a flashlight. So it's a convenience thing. I imagine they would bring it to the regular iPhone series in the next couple of versions, and they're just kind of like trying it out because that's what the Pro series is now. It's like a preview of what you're going to get.
Right. Yeah, the dynamic island now on more phones, not just the Pros. So yeah, that seems to be.
I like the dynamic island.
Do you? Do you live on the island a lot?
It's good for like checking in on stuff without it taking up the whole, like on Android, we'll get a notification. It'll take up kind of the top third of the screen. And, the dynamic island is a little less invasive in that way because it just kind of stretches out along the side where you're already not interacting with much of the interface. So like these are all thoughtful things. And
gorgeous photos, by the way.
It's,
I just want to give you props for the. I love the.
Thank you. Thank you. I am iterating every time I, figure out how to use this room as a studio. But yeah, there's just a lot of thoughtful things about the Apple ecosystem that I think it feels very frustrating as a longtime Android user because it's making it less easy for me to be like, well, I'm going to stay on Android.
Well, maybe the flip side of that is use the phone that works for you. You know what I mean? Like we dig our heels into these things for some reason. And we're like, no, dang it. I'm always Android. But I mean, for a lot of people,
it's a convenience thing too.
Yeah, well, that's true. We get really invested into one side, and it makes it harder to switch to the other. But I mean, I don't think that you're alone, I guess is my point. There are a lot of people that have been on Android for a very long time, thought I'm never switching. And that, the gap between what Apple offers and has always been kind of known to be good at, and then the things that it hadn't done yet because, air quotes, Android's always open and allows you to do so much more. I mean, that gap is shrinking.
That's also an issue with it being so open. That's why the Apple experience is a little more friendly to the user because they don't have to worry about all these things that they have to set up in the background. Like you really don't have to go through the settings as an iOS user. Like they will, they just give you a phone to use. And that's the dichotomy we still have going on.
Yeah. What did you think of the focal length thing? That was the kind of adjustable focal length. Is that really a feature that's really useful? Seems like it would be. It
really helps with like taking pictures of kids and pets. Yes, because that's what they told us to take pictures with. And as I was explaining to a friend yesterday, she was asking me, she's like, should I update from the 12? And I was like, yes, because honestly, having that ability to scale in without actually cropping the photo as you would with like a 2X, it may, it preserves a little more of the photo. And when you're already taking like a smartphone photo, you want to preserve as much of it as you can. It's not like a full-blown camera system. So I appreciate the option, even if it is at its core a software trick, because these aren't physical, certain super physical lenses like doing the deed. But it really helps to get the subtle blur behind, your person as you're shooting a photo of them without taking an aggressive portrait shot.
Yeah, right. Because I know we're kind of reaching the end of the interview. Is there any like striking, like as should I just call you Miss Android? Miss Android. coming out of this.
Appreciates that.
Well, at least for now. Yeah. Miss Android, you never know. She could be Miss something in the future. We'll see. Are you tempted by any particular thing from this experience to kind of change your thinking on what phone you want or what you want to see from Android? Like, what are you
asking if Flo is a traitor?
No, I'm asking if she's curious. Like, I mean, I think I know from my personal experience, I used Android forever. And then I did kind of the switch. We've done the switch.
I don't think we have.
No, it was with Megan.
With Megan, yeah.
I was wondering, because that's right. When Megan left, we talked about
Jason
it.
is asked, I'm like,
but I mean, I've done
maybe
those.
After the Pixel 8.
maybe.
Maybe the Pixel 8. Yeah, I doubt it. But I mean, I did those experiences and I was pleasantly surprised. It wasn't enough to woo me over, but I was like, okay, I get it. Like, I see why people are really, really into this. Like, what has this kind of experience told you, again, Miss Android, about kind of iOS in your life?
I think Apple really understands its users and like what they want out of their devices. Like, I really feel like they are just reading forums and just trying to make things happen where they can. Yeah. I'm particularly struck by this ability to tether your iPhone as a camera to your Mac. I understand that that's like a very pro level thing to even consider. And technically it's not live yet. So I haven't even really reviewed it to speak to its efficacy. But the idea of having that kind of ability within an ecosystem is, like that's why you want a company that controls everything from the inside out.
Yeah, sure.
Because then you can do stuff like that. So it's kind of what I am.
Then you can do stuff like that and it'll just work.
Just work.
Just work. It doesn't always work, right?
That's how Leo,
for the most part,
hosted from Rhode Island for the Apple event, was using continuity camera.
And it looked really good.
It looked great.
It was sharp.
Looked great, and there was no delay. So yeah, I agree that sort of everything working together is nice in that aspect, but there are then the trade-offs of to kind of further with this, he ended up giving the phone that he has now, his iPhone, to his sister. And so because of that, from the point he left Rhode Island until now, he has not really been able to use his Apple Watch because the Apple Watch was paired with that iPhone.
Oh, no.
And so those kinds of things are the hurdle that you have, right? Where when everything works together, it all needs to work together. And when it's not all there to work together, it doesn't all work together.
When it's all synced up, it works great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all we hope.
Well, thank you for doing what you're doing over at Gizmodo and, checking out what it's like on the other side of the fence and seeing where you get to. And thanks for coming on because Flo, it's been a while since I podcasted with you and I miss you in my life. So thank you.
I know. I miss you too. Jason, you need to post more TikToks. Just put it out there.
All right, I'll do my best. I'll try what I can. Flo writes for Gizmodo. Of course, you can also hear her on the Material podcast with Andy and Atko. Thank you, Flo. Nope. We'll see you soon. Bye. Take care.
All righty. Up next, Google Bard got an update with new integrations. We'll learn a bit about that momentarily. But first, let's take a quick break so I can tell you about our first sponsor today. It's Zocdoc, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. So you know that feeling when you whenever you finally find that thing that you have been searching for on the internet. You've done the research. You spent hours and hours doing the research, reading a bunch of reviews, reading Flo's reviews, trying to figure out what people think about this thing. And finally, you find it. You get the exact answer that you're looking for. You find that product, that thing. Well, it could be sparkly disco pants, designer dog hoodies, a new phone, whatever it is, it checks all the boxes you have, and it's got 5 stars, and it arrives in just 48 hours. It's such a great feeling. So why is it that you can get this special thing in just 2 days, but if you want to see a good doctor, it can take forever to get an appointment? Why? Not to mention, you don't even know necessarily if they're going to be good, and then you're back on the hunt for another doctor. Well, there is a way to solve this, to find that thing, in this case, that doctor. It's called Zocdoc, a place to find and book great doctors who have amazing reviews, many with appointments available within 24 hours. Zocdoc is a free app where you can find amazing doctors and book appointments online. We're talking about booking appointments with thousands of top-rated, patient-reviewed doctors and specialists. You can filter specifically for ones who take your insurance, are located near you, and treat almost any condition you're searching for. These docs all have verified reviews from actual, real patients, not bots, and the average wait time to see a doctor booked on Zocdoc is between just 24 to 48 hours. That's it. You can even score same-day appointments. Once you find the doc you want, you can book them immediately with just a few taps in the app. No more waiting awkwardly on hold with a receptionist. So go to Zocdoc.com/TNW and download the Zocdoc app for free. I know all of you out there, very clever, can go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and type in Zocdoc. Don't do that. Please let them know that you heard about the app here. Head to Zocdoc.com/TNW and find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZOCDOC.com/TNW. Thank you, Zocdoc, for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Zocdoc.com/TNW. All right, we are back from the break, and that means it's time to talk about our next story. I happened across an announcement earlier this week about Google sort of improving upon the Bard experience, which frankly, I think it needs to do. So I was curious to hear about what all is changing when it comes to Bard, what's new, and kind of what improvements the company has done. Joining us today to talk about it is Hugh Langley of Insider, who has written about the new updates. Welcome back to the show, Hugh.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, so let's have you start by telling us all about Google Bard. How does it kind of compare to OpenAI's ChatGPT that I think many people are familiar with, and of course, Microsoft's Copilot, which is sort of under the hood OpenAI's technology?
Yeah, I mean, so Bard is Google's chatbot, as it's often referred to. It's similar to ChatGPT, which many people have used. You ask it questions, you give it prompts, it'll tell you things. Ask it, any kind of question really, and it'll give you a response. It's similar in a lot of ways to ChatGPT. One of its advantages is it's a bit more up to date in terms of the information. ChatGPT's, I still think the information kind of stops around 2021. So it's pulling a kind of more recent information, but it's quite similar in terms of what it's meant to do. And Microsoft obviously has its own one. I actually saw today they just announced a kind of rebirth of what they're calling Copilot. Probably not coincidentally timed very close to the Bard news, and like Bard, Microsoft saying, it's going to be your assistant for all of its kind of enterprise products. So we're, what these things are is sort of changing by the day, really.
Mm-hmm. Now, Google's Bard has been the butt of many a joke, including a few of my own at this point, and that's due to it, up to this point, providing responses that just don't seem to be on par with what we've seen from something like OpenAI's ChatGPT. But the company rolled out a new version of its large language model. So I'm curious, does that mean we're going to see improvements to its responses?
So theoretically, that's the idea. So Google did update Bard with its latest large language model, which is known as PaLM-2, PaLM-2, a few months ago. But what they've done this week is they've rolled out what they're calling a sort of a newer version of that same model. It's had some new kind of fine tuning, is the technical term for these large language models, and some various improvements to the base model. So it should be a little better. What really is happening is they've done this in time with some new abilities. So they announced these extensions. So Bard can now function in tandem with other Google apps. And that's kind of where some of these improvements to the language model are coming from. It's still going to make mistakes, though. We call them hallucinations. And yes, you're right. Out the gate, there was a bit of a gaffe for them. I think Bard made some sort of factual error when they first showed it off to the press. I think it made some mistake about I think it was the James Webb Telescope, and made some factual inaccuracy about that. So it was a bit of a PR disaster out the door for them. It has gotten better, and then the introduction of Palm 2 a few months back has certainly improved it. But as you say, like ChatGPT, all of these, these chatbots are certainly prone to making errors. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about what Bard can do as of this latest update. The company is integrating it with many of its own services, YouTube, Maps, Google Flights, etc. And we'll talk about what it can do with your information soon. But let's first start by talking about these kind of services available to everyone. Can you give us some examples of how Bard can be used for YouTube or Maps or Google Flights?
Sure. So what they've done is they've effectively integrated Bard with these, they're just calling them extensions, which is what they are. Bard can now communicate with YouTube, Google Shopping, Google Flights as well, and Google Maps. So if you want to say, ask it to give you some directions from a place, it will now, pull that information from Google Maps. It will actually bring the map up into Bard, so you'll be able to see it. It's also integrating with other apps that will require specific consent from the user. That's so Gmail and Workspace will integrate if the user gives consent, and that will mean you'll be able to ask Bard to find something in your email. Maybe you want to ask it to say, summarize an upcoming trip I have, and it'll search your Gmail and sort of try its best to synthesize that information into a summary within Bard. So it's about kind of, it's really Google doing what we expected they would do, which is to just kind of tap into all of their very popular apps and put them all, so they're sort of feeding that information into Bard.
Okay. So you can also grant it permission to access your Gmail, as you mentioned, but also your docs, your personal docs, and Google Drive. So outside of Gmail, which we just talked about, what are the use cases for Bard in terms of accessing the content that I have? And then I guess more than that, how does that kind of set Google's Bard apart from the competition?
Yeah, so for example, documents, you might want to ask it to summarize a document or a spreadsheet I have in my Drive, and it might try and sort of come up with a simple summary or pull together, multiple documents and summarize that information. In terms of what that does, I mean, like I mentioned today, what we saw from Microsoft with their new Copilot, that makes it sounds like that's going to do a kind of similar thing. So again, they're sort of both moving quite fast. I think what Google's advantage here is just how many of these super popular apps they have. Gmail, Docs, Workspace. These are multi-billion user products, and that's kind of Google's advantage with all of this stuff. They already had these very popular consumer-facing products out there. So what they've been trying to do over the past few months is really supercharge them, I suppose, with its AI technology and with Bard.
Mm-hmm. Now, we have seen tech companies banning employee use of LLM-based chatbots due to the concern that proprietary information might be used to train the model. For people who are listening who are not techie, what that means is sometimes you'll have employees at, say, a tech company called Peach, who are playing around with chatbots, and they might end up trying to see if it can do some coding for them. So they put in some proprietary code from the the iPhone Peach. We'll go with that. Anyway, and then that ends up getting used in that chatbot's training information. And so companies are going, whoa, we don't want this to end up getting scooped up and potentially, spread across the world. So my question is, given that concern from kind of a corporate level, will Google be using my personal information in Gmail, Docs, and Drive to train Bard? Because I really don't want it stealing all those brilliant song lyrics that I've written over the years.
Yeah, no, it's a totally valid concern. It was probably my first question for them when I spoke to them about the announcement last week. So they're saying no. So first of all, you do have to grant permission for integration with Gmail, Docs, Workspace. And then beyond that, they're saying that information that you use with Bard will not be used for training purposes. Mm-hmm. Other information you're using with Bard, may be used. They've said that. So yes, if you're using, you're pulling information from your emails, all that stuff, they're saying will not be used for training and will not be seen by any reviewers who are working to improve Bard.
Understood. And then let's see. I guess another question is, I actually did end up using this feature earlier this week. I gave it permission to access my drive, my personal drive. And I used to work as a tech journalist at a company where we used Google Docs to write our transcripts. And then, we put them into the CMS and blah, 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 blah. So I've got a lot of tech that I've written about in the past. So I thought I'll test it. I will tell it to look through my Google Drive and surface some of the tech topics I've written about in the past and then kind of summarize them for me. So I asked it to do that, but instead of summarizing the topics I've written about, it confidently presented me with a bunch of topics and 3 or 4 articles that it said that I had written that I absolutely had not written, and said they were mine. And what's interesting, you said something earlier that made this make a little bit more sense. You said that Bard's LLM has more recent data. And so now it makes sense why those topics, which were about stuff that we're talking about today that was definitely not around when I was writing about tech at the time, were some of these articles that said I had written. So I followed up and said, can you show me where I've actually written about that? Because I know that I've not written about that. And then it proceeded to apologize and say that it made all of this up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my question is, what is Google doing about hallucination and misinformation when it comes to its tie-ins with your Gmail, your Docs, your Drive, but then also something like, I could imagine I ask it to give me the rankings for the top 5 candy stores in San Francisco and then a map to the location. And then I show up and it's just a parking lot that costs way too much to park in. And that's because it's completely made that up. What are they doing about misinformation and hallucination here?
Yeah, it's still a huge problem with these chatbots. So part of the update this week is another feature where when you ask, Bard already had it's a Google it button, like a little G icon. So when you ask Bard a question, it would give you the response, and then you could Google that response as well. It's like a shortcut to Googling the same thing you asked it, right? So if you wanted to sort of verify, check the information, you could do that. What they've done now is they've kind of gone another step with that. So when you hit that button, what you'll now see is Bard will highlight all of the text. And it will highlight the text in 2 colors, green and then a sort of orangey brown color. Now the green means this is corroborated with something on, through a Google search. And you can hover over that and click it. It will give you the link and you can click it. And it will take you to that URL and you can see what's corroborating that information. When it's the orangey brown color, that means that's Bard saying, this may or may not be correct. I could not corroborate this with anything through Google search. So it's basically Google, rolling out a feature that sort of tells you when the product might be wrong, which is kind of funny for a tech company to do that, but it's really important because, like you said, there's these confident errors, I think sometimes we refer to them as, which is where Bard is just, or ChatGPT or whatever, just telling you something in a very straightforward, confident way, and it's easy to believe what it's saying. So what Google's doing now is going to highlight where maybe it's getting it wrong. It's not to say that it is wrong, but it's to say that, okay, this can't be corroborated. And that's something you probably want to double check yourself. But yeah, I personally, I'm still, so just earlier, yesterday, actually, I tried to get it to summarize an upcoming flight from my Gmail, and it just made up a date. It got it completely wrong. But then I asked to do it again a few hours later, and it got it spot on. So so in terms of the highlighting so far, it doesn't seem that works with the integrations, but it does still work with the questions and responses.
Understood. And then my last question for you, if folks want to find these new Bard features to try them out for themselves, is there a place they go, or do they just do a Google, like how do they get access to this new Bard stuff?
Yeah, it's been rolled out instantly. So if you go onto Bard, as long as you're using the personal version of Bard, it's not currently working in the like enterprise workspace version. So as long as your Google account is just like a standard Google account, when you go onto Bard, you'll actually see it in the corner. There's a little like jigsaw puzzle. I guess the universal symbol for extensions these days, and you click that and it will bring up, it will show you all of the extensions. And then with the ones I mentioned, some of them you will need to give that explicit permission. There's a little toggle you hit, and then I think it asks you again, maybe if you're okay with them doing this. And then from that point, you shouldn't really need to think about it. Google suggests as well, like when you're using these extensions within Bard to like, so you to sort of tag the app you're wanting to use. So like check my @ symbol Gmail, a little Gmail icon will appear, and then you can do that. It actually worked once when I didn't do that. So you might want to, maybe both works, but I think you're meant to tag these apps. So to increase the likelihood of actually getting it right.
Okay, well, there's a good tip. Yeah, we wanted to get it right and not tell us a flight's coming up that doesn't exist. Hugh Langley, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Of course, folks can head over to Business Insider to check out this piece. But if they want to follow you online to keep up with your work, where should they go to do that?
They can go to, I was about to call it Twitter, X. I'm just at Hugh Langley. On there, and I try to share as much as I can, maybe less so these days, but yeah, that's the best place to find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Yeah, and twitter.com still works. So I like to just pretend that it's still Twitter because I can still enter that into the URL bar and it still takes me there. It'll probably disappear next week at this point. Because I said
just
that
in
out
time.
loud.
Yeah.
All right, up next, Microsoft got really leaky. They're leaking out a bunch of stuff all over the place. It's going everywhere, and it's not good. Somebody had a really bad day. We'll talk about that. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Discourse, the online home for your community, for our community. We have a Twit community with Discourse. We love it. For over a decade, Discourse has made it their mission to make the internet a better place for online communities, because that's what it's all about, right? One giant community. By harnessing the power of discussion, real-time chat, and AI, Discourse makes it easy to have meaningful conversations and collaborate with your community anytime, anywhere. So if you want to actually create a community like we have done, you can visit discourse.org/twit. Make sure and go to that URL. You're going to get 1 month free on all self-serve plans when you do that. It's trusted by some of the largest companies in the world. Discourse is open source. It powers more than 20,000 online communities. So whether you're just starting out or you want to take your current community to the next level, you want to level it up, there's a plan for you. They've got a basic plan for a private invite-only community, a standard plan if you want unlimited members, and then, of course, a public presence along with that. And then finally, a business plan for active customer support communities. Jonathan Bulava is the developer advocacy lead at Twitch, actually said, quote, "Discourse is the most amazing thing we have ever used. We have never experienced software so reliable ever." Wow. That's a big proclamation and true. One of the biggest advantages to creating your own community with Discourse is that you own your own data, right? It's your data. You will always have access to all of your conversation history. Discourse will never sell your data to advertisers. Discourse gives you everything you need in one place, so make Discourse the online home for your community. Visit discourse.org/twit. And like I said, you'll get 1 month free on all self-serve plans. Take your pick. That's discourse.org/twit. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right. So like I said, someone at Microsoft had a really bad day this week. Not happy. Maybe a team was not happy. I don't know. But I do know that the FTC is blaming Microsoft for this unprecedented leak this week of the company's gaming roadmap all the way out to 2028. I mean, it's kind of like the full Monty, really. Joining me to talk our way through all of it is, well, it's the triumphant return of Sam Machkovech. Sam, it's been too long. How are you doing, Sam?
Far too long. I love that it took maybe the largest gaming sector leak in years to bring me on, but if that's what it takes to get your thunder, then I will take it. I will accept this lightning. I will accept this. Yes. Wild news. Where do you want to begin?
Well, I mean, I think maybe we start with the case itself, because this is all tied to the Microsoft Activision Blizzard case. That we definitely talked about on the show in past several weeks. How does a leak of this magnitude happen when it's being directed through like a case like this? And obviously, like I said, FTC is blaming Microsoft. So what did Microsoft do wrong here in the confines of this case?
So as far as disclosure goes with these kinds of antitrust cases, because Microsoft wants to spend a lot of money, billions, on acquiring one of the largest console, computer, and phone gaming conglomerates, Activision Blizzard King. Remember, this ranges from World of Warcraft to Call of Duty to Candy Crush and a lot of in between. So that kind of disclosure where you've got to just upload files in a more internet connected court system. So nobody's saying who. Microsoft has yet to come out and say, we did it. It's our fault. Or Joe in accounting did it. But somebody in the course of making documents available for all review possible hit the wrong button or uploaded the wrong non-redacted file. This is supposed to be a place where redacted files would go to eventually, I believe, be publicly revealed. So the unredacted ones, even though the files in question have the word redacted in them as if that was the intent. So you end up with a ton of these documents. What's really striking is a lot of them aren't just transcripts, which you would understand, okay, well, we can redact all the sensitive stuff and still have certain timelines and people in the conversation be public. So those being unredacted is intense, but then you just have entire product announcement categories that would have required a massive black shape over the shape of a controller. So it's really confusing as to not just the lack of redaction, but also the scope of the documents. This is a lot of internal information that people would kill to see just an average, because there's so much smoke and mirrors in the modern gaming and entertainment space of we're going to wait and we're going to wait and we're going to get you hyped up with little tidbits every 2 to 3 months. And that's a lot of that's gone now.
That's what's so interesting about this. Okay, so let's dive into, I think one thing that cracks me up about a leak like this is, yes, everybody's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe something like this happened. But so quickly it just veers into, all right, what are we not supposed to know? Tell us the details. It's hard to not go there. So let's go there. And then we'll come back and kind of talk a little bit about kind of the impact that this potentially has on Microsoft when your goods are spilled entirely. So what would you say is the most valuable piece of information that Microsoft did not want to give, but they apparently did?
It's hard to count that, because I think for some people, it's the specific hardware announcements, which I'll get to. But I personally think it's the clear numbers and clear answers. Now, there's a lot of back and forth emails that are full threads with every reply in the conversation from major stakeholders. Phil Spencer being the most obvious, well-known, because he's a very public face of Xbox. He's sort of the chief of the Xbox division and was promoted in the Microsoft hierarchy as one of the largest leaders in the entire company, but also a lot of the major players in that consumer electronics division. So we're seeing specific numbers, or number of games sold, number of Xbox Game Pass subscriptions, number of hours that are played, which is a very large metric that they're very, very intent on. They really want number of hours. And that's just interesting to know that they care about that metric. There's a number, 1.5 billion was a subsidy that they marked for the Series X and Series S boxes, those new consoles, in its first holiday season. That's massive. So we also have these well-placed guesses from Microsoft about its peers. Like, here's one example that kind of blows my mind. They believe that the privately held company Valve, who makes Steam and a lot of PC games and sells a lot of PC games, is worth roughly $7 or $8 billion in their estimation. That's not them just pulling a number out of the hat. They have good intel to lead them to that number. And as a privately held company, everyone's always kind of wondered and guessed, how much are they worth? So that number being there, along with a bunch of other estimations and evaluations, I think is huge. But the most widely shared details, the ones that you may have seen if you're scrolling on social media that has anything to do with games, are the pieces of hardware. So there's a refresh to the existing systems, the Series S and the Series X. These appear to have refreshes coming in holiday of 2024. And the Series X, which you're seeing on the screen right now, that image is pretty wild. We're seeing exactly how it may look. Like that's pretty much done. Like you don't get a render like that if the hardware's not already being molded and prepared and run through all the QA and all of that. It's removed the disk drive, apparently. And this internal document, this was clearly never meant to go out to people because it uses the phrase adorably all digital. That's just rubbing a hardcore segment of gamers the wrong way. Yeah. This is the kind of message that Phil Spencer would have never let get out because Microsoft has talked a lot about backwards compatibility. And what's more backwards compatible than discs, the ones that you and your family have been buying maybe for years. So if Microsoft is really going to do that, then that would mean there's no Xbox Series system that would have a disk drive from 2024 on. And that's, I mean, there's a lot to be said about that, and people are saying it. And I'm one of those who believes in being able to have choice when I want to get old games, because when you go to buy a digital copy of an old movie or old music, it's always going to cost more than the used disc. And that's 3 times as bad in gaming. So like think about Google Play or iTunes. Like why would I spend that much for a copy of, I don't know, Leaving Las Vegas? Why can't I just get that on a DVD? Yeah, video games are even worse in that way. So that's like the biggest, I think, thing of physical, one of the biggest things. There's some more, but I'll let you pop in real.
Well, I think what strikes me about that is a console that goes all digital runs the risk of being seen as having no true longevity in my mind. Like it really is a piece of hardware that exists for a specific moment in time, and once Microsoft decides that moment has passed, that console's done. And I realize that we've seen many consoles begin and end, but so many of the classic consoles, the ones that I grew up with, you can still go back and enjoy 100% of everything that ever happened on those consoles because it's all physical media. But
here's where all these documents are interesting, because Microsoft expects you to say that, and their response is we are a multiple platform company. The whole point is we just want you on Xbox. Now that's been public messaging for a while, but they've talked about their plans for a new box in 2028. Right. And they actually have until the end of the calendar year this year, according to these documents from last year, which means things may have changed. But the plan was to finalize some serious specific hardware details by the end of this year, the form factor, also the type of processor, whether it's going to revolve on x64, which is sort of what standard computers and current systems use, or ARM, which is what the Switch and a lot of smaller electronics use. So that's going to be a big decision that pushes. But they clearly still want us buying boxes or running in boxes, but there's other charts that make really clear they want you on subscriptions. They want you accessing everything maybe from the cloud. There's not all of the data there that shows them saying, yes, internet connections are good enough in enough of the world where we can actually do streaming, because game streaming is a lot more intensive than, say, Netflix or other video streaming. But they're clearly trying to say, hey, you don't need the disc. We're going to make it so convenient. Keep paying us money. Keep buying into our subscription. Stay on the service, and we'll keep you hooked up. And they're not the only big tech company to do so, but we now have so much detail as to how they plan on pushing this, and that it's a multi-year strategy. This is something they need 5 years to sell. And instead, this leak made it a lot faster.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Talk about a curveball of epic proportions. I know we haven't talked about the controller. We probably can't talk in detail about every single thing, but I do want to talk about, you mentioned Valve, and these documents seem to allude to Microsoft having at least the strong desire to possibly scoop up Nintendo or scoop up Valve, or maybe even both. Does that even sound possible to you from an antitrust kind of, we're in the midst of technology antitrust mecca right now. Is this even something that is conceivable, A, and B, conceivable now that it's widely known?
So what's interesting is these documents point back to something that had been revealed months earlier, where someone saw an email that said Microsoft really wants to buy Sega. And these documents now open up that story and specify how much they wanted to buy Sega and what they would have paid. They would have gotten classic stuff like your Sonic the Hedgehog and newer games like Football Manager and everything in between. But what I find interesting is, yes, Valve and Nintendo are mentioned, especially because bigger executives go, how big could we go? And Phil Spencer is very frank in just sort of replying to that, as opposed to necessarily saying that's his priority. But there's a conversation that evaded headlines this week. I want to point to this. March of 2021, Phil Spencer is describing the importance of quote unquote engagement to drive Xbox success. So more people playing more games on Xbox is good for Xbox. That's duh, of course. But then he goes on to say this: I want to make it clear to Google, Amazon, etc., that you are not going to catch us in gaming. And one of the reasons cited internally at Google for them divesting of the first party, meaning when they melted down their Stadia plan, was our ZeniMax acquisition, meaning Bethesda and all that, for the billions they spent on that. And he says, I just want to put us out of reach. And another reply in the chain points to that same narrative. I've heard as much from Google friends about the chill the ZeniMax acquisition had on their plan. So let's simmer on that for a second. This is a document that was handed to antitrust regulators about Microsoft's possible overreach in buying and acquiring other companies. And there's Phil Spencer, clear as day, saying to key Microsoft players that they should acquire more game-making companies to freeze out the competition. That sentence, that clause has not been making headlines, and it blows my mind because what it's pointing to is they're saying this is how we compete. There's a whole other document where Spencer talks about what does it mean to be AAA when there's not a retail chain, when Best Buy and Circuit City aren't the things that drive us as the big companies to have mindshare. And his response is giant mega budget games with big anticipation. And Microsoft is kind of spelling out here, we will be AAA, not because we have space in store shelves, but because space in people's minds. And so buying Call of Duty, buying World of Warcraft, buying Candy Crush, and all those others is part of that. And I would really love to see regulators go and double down and look at what they're saying here, because they're essentially saying, I want to put us out of reach. Holy cow.
Okay. So then in light of that, circling back to why we even see these documents to begin with, it's part of another, it's part of an acquisition case or where Microsoft wants to buy Activision Blizzard. And in light of what you just said about some of these revelations, I mean, that seems to make a really strong case that maybe something like this isn't a good idea, because it's kind of playing into this idea of getting rid of all the competition so that there is one true player. Do you see docs like this? Well, what is your take on your outlook on this case, I guess, at this point, given what we know?
I think that Microsoft has made a big enough, it's done a lot of conceding, especially with European regulators, to say, oh, you're concerned about us in the cloud. Okay, we're going to partner with other cloud companies and make sure that our stuff is also sort of interchangeable. GeoForce Now and some others are involved in that way. I don't know that regulators are going to take the action that they potentially could based on these documents. We don't really know.
Yeah.
But I will say that the stuff they said about Nintendo is going to blow up certain kinds of relationships, especially in Asia. The stuff where Phil, this is a long thing, but the short version is that he suggests that there's a Microsoft-friendly entity that now owns a bunch of stock in Nintendo, and he wants that stockholder to start pushing and shaking some branches at Nintendo to be like, why aren't you getting more quarterly money? Wouldn't aligning with a certain Western company mean you'd make more money on a quarterly basis? And I think Nintendo, now seeing that clear as day as a listed potential strategy, is going to freeze out anything they can and stick with a very specific Japanese way of business of continuing to shut out the idea of Microsoft and Nintendo getting buddy-buddy. There's a lot in the documents about that. And the short version is some partnerships are going to be fine. Some partnerships, especially with the US government, are probably going to be untouched, even if they should be more opened up, even if they're making really clear that they're being sort of monopolistic. And some partnerships are going to be embarrassed and irrevocably changed.
Boy, yeah.
So that's going to be a thing that we're not going to see play out immediately, but there could be deals 2-3 years from now, because that's how long these take, that suddenly are a little less Microsoft specific. But ultimately, Microsoft has a lot of mind share. So they're still going to command presence. Game Pass is, as these documents show, quite successful at getting people, and game companies want those eyeballs. So I do think at this point, the history books will be interesting on this 15 years from now. is sort of my overall hunch on this.
Yeah, right on. Well, Sam, such a pleasure getting you back on. It's been too long, and I love hearing your take on all things gaming. Where do you want to point people if people want to kind of follow what you're doing right now?
I don't use any of the other social medias. samred.com shows things I'm writing and links to other stuff. So if you're looking for me or want to email me, that's where. So it's good to see everybody.
Good to see you,
and hopefully
Sam.
Chat soon about nerd stuff.
All right, sounds good.
Sam.
We'll be looking for the nerd stuff so we can find the opportunity. Thank you again, Sam. We'll talk to you soon.
Alrighty, up next, we're going to take a look at the new devices and features Amazon announced at its recent product event. But first, I do want to take a quick break to tell you about Melissa, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. Melissa, the data quality experts. For 38 years, my word, Melissa has helped companies harness the value of their customer data to drive insight, maintain data quality, and support global intelligence. We know all data goes bad, and it turns out up to 25% per year of data goes bad. Having clean and verified data helps customers to have a smooth, error-free purchase experience. Bad data is bad business and costs an average of $9 million each year. $9 million wasted. Flexible to fit into any business model, Melissa verifies addresses for more than 240 countries to ensure only valid billing and shipping addresses enter your system. Melissa's international address validation cleans and corrects street addresses worldwide. Chinese, Japanese, and Cyrillic are just a few of the writing systems that Melissa's global address verification supports. Addresses automatically transliterate from one system to another. You can focus your spending where it matters most. Melissa offers free trials and sample codes, flexible pricing, ROI guarantee, unlimited technical support to customers all around the world. And you can download their free Melissa Lookups app from Google Play or the Apple Store with no sign up required. This is a great way to kind of see what Melissa is capable of doing. I've used this in the past when I keep getting stupid calls from people who are clearly trying to spam me and trying to figure out where these numbers are coming from and being able to see, oh, this is all coming from one company, and then trying to figure out if I can get off of their list. You can validate an address and personal identity in the USA or Canada. You can check global phone numbers to find caller, carrier, and geographical information, and you can check global IP address information, plus so much more. Once you're signed up with Melissa, it's easy to integrate their other services, including Melissa Identity Verification, which increases compliance, reduces fraud, and improves onboarding, or Melissa Enrich, which lets you gain insight into who and where your customers are. Melissa specializes in global intelligence solutions and undergoes independent third-party security audits. They're SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant, so you know your data is in the best hands. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit. And we thank Melissa, as always, for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly and all of Twit. All righty. So Amazon had a product event where they announced several new products, but maybe not as many as we've seen in the past. The company is kind of known for rolling out product after product at its annual ALEXA events. And this year, it felt a little sober in comparison. There are some iterations that I think we all should have expected to be happening. First and foremost, with an LLM-based generative AI ALEXA. So Amazon's virtual assistant is going to be powered by and optimized for voice interactions using large language model. So this is going to improve a lot of stuff. It means that getting real-time information, controlling the smart home, maximizing, entertainment, setting timers, whatever you happen to do with ALEXA, you'll be able to do this. Now, soon, you'll be able to test out some of these new capabilities before they roll them out. If you're in the US, you can say, ALEXA, let's chat, and then that in the preview, it will kind of show you how the virtual assistant is changing, how it sounds, and then also you'll be able to kind of understand its ability to reason, to infer your intent, and understand complex requests. So you'll see a marked improvement in this. And I think what's most interesting for me about this is they seem to be going kind of the Apple route in terms of what we've heard Apple is working on internally with generative AI. And I think this is the right way to do it. What we see with Microsoft through Bing and with Google through Bard is a direct interaction between you and the generative AI, and that is in the form of these chatbots. And these chatbots are unpredictable. We've seen them. It made up articles that I had written that I did not write. I mean, it does all sorts of stuff
that you don't know that you wrote.
Yeah. Whoa. Might I write them in the future? Who knows? And so what Apple is reportedly doing is they are using generative AI to take what you are saying and translate it into something that the machine is going to understand every time. So right now, when I tell Siri to do something, I kind of have to speak Siri's language, right? Mm-hmm. And and sometimes if I say to do a thing and do a thing, it doesn't do it exactly, or it doesn't get it. With generative AI, it can take what you are saying, no matter how you say it, and then it can go, okay, you mean this, you mean this, you mean this, and then pass that information along to the assistant, have the assistant respond how you would expect it to. It seems like that's what Amazon is trying to do with ALEXA. It is kind of keeping... It's avoiding the concern for false information and some hallucination by making it so that it's just about translating human interaction into robotic interaction. And I think that's the way to go, honestly. Some other features that are coming to ALEXA include an eye gaze mode. So right now you can use your voice to interact with the assistant, or for the devices that support it, you can use touch. For customers with speech or mobility disabilities, they'll be able to use eye gaze with their tablets to set different actions like playing music and shows, controlling their home, calling loved ones. So you don't have to use your hands. You don't even have to use your voice. And this is coming to the Fire Max tablets. And then also ALEXA Emergency Assist. This is a way to, think of it kind of like Life Alert or something similar. You can subscribe to this Emergency Assist feature, and it's $5.99 per month or $59 per year. And it lets you get safety services as you need them, including 24/7 urgent response, something called smart alerts, and then emergency contacts. So think about if you fall in your home, being able to use this emergency assist to not only contact emergency services to come, but then also notify your family or whoever your emergency contacts happen to be of what's going on. Another thing I thought was kind of cool, I didn't at first have this in the list, but there's something called Email to ALEXA. And the idea is that if you send an email, an invite, or even a photo that you take of an event to ALEXA, it will process the information that you send and then add it to your calendar and send you a confirmation. So maybe you're out and about and you see a flyer for a show that you want to go see, take a photo, send it to the virtual assistant, and then it will email you back and say, okay, I've added that to your calendar. So it's a little bit more getting into personal assistant territory, which is kind of what we've wanted out of this in the first place. Another fun thing is AI art on Fire TV. So if you have a Fire TV, you'll be able to kind of prompt the virtual assistant on the Fire TV to create something fun to kind of use as a screensaver or a display on the TV. That's going to be rolling out by the end of this year. And so in the background, you can have some fun art that you plus the AI have created together. As far as hardware goes, the company announced new Echo frames. I have to tell you, I am shook. Reader, he was shook, because I've had Echo frames and they looked ugly and they didn't sound good, and I didn't understand the point of them. The fact that they're still making Echo frames is surprising to me. However, They have significantly improved upon the design of the Echo frames. These frames do look better. So they use, they say high-end fashion, plus of course, ALEXA technology. I suppose it doesn't hurt to have good-looking models wearing them as well. That kind of adds to the. But no, there are several different pairs, and they kind of remind me of Warby Parker glasses in that way. So you can use them to communicate with your virtual assistant. They have options for lenses, so UV protection, prescription lenses, blue light lenses. They're, of course, splash and scratch resistant. You'll get media playback. You can also place calls on them, 14 hours of battery life, and they, of course, let you charge with the case that comes with it. So they do look a lot better. I wouldn't feel as much like I'm wearing geek glasses on my face so much as I've seen in the past. So yeah, those just look like normal sunglasses, but secretly it's, it can be playing audio for you. Former colleague Karsten Bondi had some Echo frames, and he actually quite liked them for the ability to just have kind of an ambient listening experience going on while he was doing other things. Price starts at $270. So, they're not inexpensive, but I suppose if you're there, look at those. Those just look like normal sunglasses.
They do. What that picture kind of hides is the
thicker arm.
The thicker arm. Yeah, it definitely has a little bit of extra chunkiness to it. But I mean, I say that to kind of like pick at it a little bit, I suppose. This is a far cry from where these kinds of things have been.
I wish I would have brought in the frame so you could see. Yeah, so people could see. Before it, not only was it thick in terms of sort of the vertical nature, but its width on the side of your face was also. So it was, I mean, they were just big and they looked goofy.
Yeah, these look a lot better.
These look a lot better. There's a new Echo Show 8 that gets something called an ambient experience. The way that this works is that it will kind of change what's being displayed based on where you are in relation to the screen. So using computer vision and like ambient light sensors and all of that stuff, it can determine your proximity. And so when you're further away, it's just going to show like a simplified news headline perhaps, or a large clock, information that you're actually able to see while you're standing across the room. But as you get closer, voom, 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 it transitions to a more detailed experience. And then also one that it goes, okay, now that you're closer, you can interact with it with touch. So I think that's very smart. I like this idea of these devices interacting with us just as much as we interact with them. And then I wanted to mention something that I'm really happy to see them do. This, I think, is a bit of a knife in the side of the smart photo frame sort of ecosystem. They are releasing it's $1.99 a month, which is, I think, a very good price, called a Photo Plus subscription. And with the Photo Plus subscription, you can basically turn your Echo or Fire TV into, and by Echo I mean an Echo Show, any device that has a screen, into a digital photo frame that other people can share photos to. So many people buy these other products that are photo frames that there's some online service or an
Nix
email.
Play is one of them.
Play, and a couple of those. Your family members can send photos to those, and they're great. They look great, but to have this one device that does it all and that I know people could be sending photos to, it's just smart. I'm surprised it's taken this long to do it.
It's surprising.
It's a good idea to have. The Echo Hub is a new product category for Amazon, and it is meant to be a display you stick to your wall, and it lets you control your smart home. So it's completely wall mountable. You can use it if you want to with a stand, but they really kind of show it as this 8-inch touchscreen that lets you control your smart home. It doesn't have any cameras or anything on it because it's not meant to be that. It is just kind of meant to be this display that you put on your screen or on your wall. It's $180. It does have it has all of the devices that Echo and Amazon support, but it also has Matter and Thread built in. And then you can use, if you'd like, you can use it with power over Ethernet if you've got something that works with that. So if you wanted to kind of install it and have it constantly powered in the wall, you can do that as well. I think it's a great idea. And along with that, they announced something new called Map View. And this is a pretty clever idea where you create a map of your home and then you notate where your smart home accessories are in your home. So I've got lights here, and I've got the lock on my front door, and I've got my garage door, and I've got a light strip against the wall. And then people can use, for example, that Echo Hub or any device that supports Amazon's ALEXA app to see the view in that map way and be able to go, okay, so these are the lights in the living room. I can adjust those, turn those on and off. I think that's a very clever idea they've come up with. That's rolling out later this year, and it is privacy preserving. Your map, your home map does not get shared or used to market to you. A few other quick things. A new Eero called the Eero Max 7. It starts at $600. That's because it packs in Wi-Fi 7. It has two 10 gigabit Ethernet ports on it and two, I think 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports. Wow. This is the absolute, cutting edge, latest in Wi-Fi technology built into a router. So obviously it's going to be a high price. It's a tri-band Wi-Fi 7. If you've got that kind of connection at home, and if you've got devices that support Wi-Fi 7, then you will be able to use this to the full capabilities. But I think what it does is it lets you go ahead and get this now and be prepared for the next step when it comes to all of the devices also supporting Wi-Fi 7.
Wow, three packs, $1,700.
Yeah. Just the one pack on its own, just the one router is, I think, 2,500 square feet of coverage. But if you've got more than that, aka if you live outside of California, then you might want the bigger size. So all the money you're saving on rent, you can then buy the bigger size. And then, of course, there are some updates to Fire TV, the second generation Fire TV Stick 4K, which is it's $49.99. And so this is a great price for a streaming dongle. Not a whole lot of improvements other than it's faster, but it has Wi-Fi 6. And then there's the Fire TV Stick 4K Max, second generation.
Oh, dear.
This one packs in a new thing called the ambient experience. And what this does is it kind of eliminates blank screens. So anytime you are, instead of going to like a screensaver mode or when there happens to be an interstitial screen, it will show you some other kind of a smart display. So it can have, your family calendar, the local weather forecast, the reminders. You can also, as I mentioned, use it to create AI artwork, or you can also use the collection of more than 2,000 free gallery quality pieces of artwork to have displayed on your screen. So it's just kind of a nice way to keep stuff displayed on the screen whenever it's not in use, if you happen to do that there. For folks who are listening, we've got kind of a slideshow playing of the different things that you can possibly go on the screen. I think it's quite nice, although I'm sure it will quickly become a way for Amazon to advertise
I'm sure
products to us.
Yeah, no doubt.
Outside of that, so there's a new Fire TV sound bar, which is a 24-inch sound bar that, of course, works well when integrated with Fire TV stuff. Some updates to both Blink and Ring. So Blink is one of their home security device manufacturers. Ring is the other home security device manufacturer. New kind of stick-up cams. Blink is the more budget-friendly option, where Ring is the more kind of feature-packed and pricier option, including a Ring stick-up cam Pro. That is almost everything. There's some stuff for kids
totally.
and family, but we don't really need to go into that because it's just, for the most part, some iterative updates to family stuff and kids stuff. So while it sounds like a bunch of new products, it is less than we've seen the company announce in the past. So it's feeling less like spaghetti projects.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There isn't a whole lot there that's kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. I mean, maybe the frames, but they already did that.
Yeah, this is just an iteration on that design. Yeah. There's no new robot that they want you to put in your house. It is, and I kind of, this is refreshing to me because I was getting tired of seeing the company use its customers as its means of alpha and beta testing its products, making you pay for them and test them and then tell them how the experience goes.
Right.
It wasn't just, we'll send this to you, you try it, you see what you think, and then we consider making it a product. No, you had to buy it. And then if it was garbage, then you paid for it. It was a bad, I feel, a bad way of doing business. So seeing these iterative updates, I think, is a better idea. And I am very excited to see the improvements or even just changes to ALEXA by way of large language model. Now, I don't know if Amazon has its own large language model, what it's using, but hopefully we'll see some more about that as time goes on and we get more access to this. So a lot of this stuff rolling out over time. We, of course, can link to the Amazon page that has links to all of this stuff as well. So you can kind of figure out if there's anything on that list. I know I'm eyeballing that new Eero for sure.
I thought for sure you were going to get the frames.
Oh, golly, not me.
Next episode, you're going to be sporting some new glasses.
Oh, Lord, help me. No, thank you. So yeah, that's what Amazon announced earlier this week.
Right on. Well, we have reached the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. We thank you so much for watching and listening every Thursday when we record this and release it. You can subscribe by going to twit.tv/TNW. Find all the ways to subscribe there. If you're outside of the club, that's the way to support us. Subscribe to the feed and, download it each and every week. And we appreciate you when you do that.
I want to point out that a great way to help out and to make sure we can continue to bring these shows to you each and every week is by joining the club. I'm looking around me and it seems like the walls are moving in closer and things are just disappearing as we have to sell them all to keep this studio alive.
Oh dear. Things just got really dark in here.
The square footage of the studio seems to be shrinking around me as we have to sell off square foot by square foot just to keep the lights on. So please consider joining the club so I don't get squeezed into the middle of these walls at twit.tv/clubtwit. For just $7 a month, $84 a year, you make a huge impact on what we're able to do here at Twit, at twit.tv/clubtwit. When you join the club, you get some great stuff. Does it sound desperate? Yes, that's because it is desperate. It would be great to have you there. You get every single Twit show with no ads. It's just the content because you, in effect, are supporting the show. You get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show. Special Club Twit events get published in the club, and that means that there's a huge back catalog. So like when you join the club for the first time, you get to look back and see a bunch of stuff that you might, that interview, there was an AMA with this, fireside chat. It's so fun to be able to look at that library of content and get a bunch of stuff. Again, twit.tv/clubtwit, $7 a month, $84 a year. You'll also gain access to the Club Twit Discord, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and many of us here at Twit. As Leo says, it's the best social media network on the internet, and we'd love to have you join us in the club. Along with that, we continue to launch new shows that are Club Twit exclusive shows, so you get lots of great content, including the Untitled Linux Show. You also will get to check out Hands on Windows, which is a short format show from Paul Thurrott that covers Windows tips and tricks. Hands on Mac, which is a short format show that covers Apple tips and tricks. I've got a bunch of episodes ready for you. It's very very exciting, the kind of next iteration and rollout of episodes that I've got for you, as well as Home Theater Geeks from Scott Wilkinson that covers home theater products, home theater announcements, and everything in between. And not to mention, but to mention, AI Inside, which is Jason Howell's show in the club, all about artificial intelligence. I believe I said starting at $7 a month or $84 a year. That's not because it's a tiered subscription where you only get AI Inside if you pay $15 a month or something like that. No. If you pay $7 a month, you're going to get all of that stuff I just talked about. But we did hear from some folks who said, we'd like to give you a little bit more money because they heard about those walls closing in. So we said, okay, great. So some folks have opted to pay more than $7 a month. But yes, regardless of the amount that you pay, as long as it's $7 or more, you will get all of that stuff. Again, twit.tv/clubtwit. If you'd like to follow me online, check out the work that I have done. You can head to @Micah on many a social media network, or go to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. And you should check out later today, if you're a member of Club Twit, Hands on Mac. You can check out on Sundays, Ask the Tech Guys with Leo Laporte and yours truly, where we take your tech questions live on air and do our best to answer them. Or on Tuesdays, you can watch iOS Today with Rosemary Orchard and, again, yours truly. This upcoming episode will be all about the new iPhones. We'll be reviewing those, so I'm looking forward to that. Jason Howell, what about you?
Well, I can be found on Twitter /X @Jason Howell. Can be found on Mastodon, twit.social /@Jason Howell. I have to look into that Chihuahua thing because I know that links to something else that has all of your links, and I need to just make something like that. It's easier to point people to just one place. But yes, my other show right now is AI Inside. Right now, you can only get it if you're in the club, but we are streaming it live. So if you're around on Thursdays, 1 p.m. Pacific, you can tune into the live stream, twit.tv/live, and see what you're missing. It'll be me and Jeff Jarvis. Today we're speaking with Nurit Weisblatt, who is the author of Techlash and has a new blog about the AI Techlash. So we're going to talk all about that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Big thanks to everybody here in the studio who help us do this show each and every week. John, there's Burke behind the scenes. Sometimes Ant's in here throwing things around. Everybody gets involved.
We got Anthony today.
Anthony, that's right. Anthony is filling in. That's right. I couldn't see behind the monitors, so I didn't get there. There he is. Okay. Now I got it. And thank you for watching and listening each and every week. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.